Okay, now we're back here in the work of Rabbi Tatz on BECHIRA on free will, and he gets into a real, deep discussion, as if it hasn't been deep enough yet. He gets into a very deep discussion over here of certain, I guess we'll call them the quandaries that we're going to have in free will, and he calls this one other attacks on free will, coercion and duress. When a person is being coerced or they are under duress to do something and they end up doing what they are being coerced to do, is that considered to be free will or not free will? If I do what someone is forcing me, they're telling me to do something I don't want to do, but they're holding a gun to my head and they say do it, and so I do what I don't want to do, am I using my free will when I decide to do what I don't really want to do? Because the other option is they're gonna kill me, if that will be the level of the duress that a person is under. So he gets into a fascinating discussion over here based on the words of the Rambam, which we'll see. And he says like this: there's something called duress, which is from within and from without. And he says, of course, the freedom to choose can be compromised by force. An action performed at gunpoint is not free. Someone is holding a gun to my head and they tell me to turn on the light on Shabbos. Okay? So if I turn on the light on Shabbos, the guy said, I'm going to blow out, I'll kill you if you don't do it. So there's no choice that I have over here. I'm being forced to do such a thing. However, some situations of duress require resistance. Even though that I'm being forced into doing something, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wants me to do is resist the duress that I'm under. Even under extreme pressure, certain sins may not be committed even on pain or death. So now this is a famous thing. There are 3 cardinal sins that a person, if they are given the choice, either commit the sin or I'm going to kill you, a person is supposed to resist doing the sin, and they're supposed to be killed. The 3 cardinal sins of the Jewish people that were not allowed to transgress are, number 1, avodah zarah, worshipping idols, like the Jewish people at the sin of the golden calf, worshipping idols. Number 2, I'm not allowed to murder somebody else to save my own life, because who says one person's blood is redder than the other? I cannot do such a thing. And number 3, there are many prohibited relations of arayas, of illicit relations that the Torah speaks about. I'm not allowed to defile myself and somebody else in an illicit relation in order to save my life. So if somebody would come over to me and they would say, either you kill this person or I'm going to kill you. So the Torah says, you have to kill you. You have to get killed. I want you to have a relation with this woman over here or I'm going to kill you. You have to get killed. I want you to bow down to this idol, I'm going to kill you. You have to get killed. I'm not allowed to do those 3 cardinal sins. They're like the antithesis of what it means to be a Jew. In 3 different ways, the antithesis of a Jew is these 3 things, and therefore a Jew doesn't do such a thing. Now, says Rav Tatz the following. So what is the degree of responsibility for failure in such ordeals? Let's say you failed. The guy's holding the gun and he says, bow down to the idol, I'm going to kill you. Okay, I'll bow down to the idol. I don't want to die. I'd rather live. Now, you failed the ordeal. You were supposed to give up your life. So what's the punishment? So, if one succumbs and sins in such situations, the degree of accountability depends on the following. The Rambam, I'll say it to you in English and then we're going to read it in Hebrew. The Rambam rules that a sin or a crime committed under threat of death is not punishable, even when one is forced to commit idolatry, immorality, or murder. Although these 3 cardinal sins are forbidden even under the threat of death, when a person fails to give up his life and transgress, he's not punished. The transgression was forced on him and he's not guilty. So I want to read you the words of the Rambam over here so we can understand. The Rambam, just a little background, and we'll see these words that he's quoting. Kol mi shenemar b'yavar, v'kol mi shenemar b'yahareg v'al yavar. Any of the sins in the Torah that it says you have to give up your life and not transgress the sin, which we're saying is the 3 cardinal sins: worshipping idols, killing another person, or having immoral, illicit relations. V'neherag, and you end up giving up your life and you get killed. V'loy over, and you did not transgress this sin. Hareze kiddush as Hashem, you have just sanctified the name of God. Because since that Hashem says it's so bad to do these 3 things, you have to give up your life. If you're willing to give up your life like you're supposed to, you sanctify God's name. And if there were 10 Jews standing around who watched you give up your life for the sake of this, not doing this sin, you just sanctify God's name publicly. So you could sanctify God's name privately. If it was between you and this perpetrator over here is saying, I'm going to kill you if you don't kill this person. So if you end up getting killed, you end up sanctifying God's name. And if you do it in front of 10 Jews, that's called a public publicization of this sanctification. That's even a greater level. Kedaniel, Chananya, Mishael, Azariah, Akiva, V'chaverev, like we find throughout history, Chananya, Mishael, Azariah, these were 3 people that they were given the proposition. Either you bow down to the idol, you bow down to the evil king, I believe it was Nebuchadnezzar over there, and his idols, or we're going to throw you into the fiery furnace and you're going to die. So they said, so throw us into the furnace. We're not bowing down. Rabbi Akiva was told either, well, we'll have to see over there. Rabbi Akiva was told to stop teaching Torah. Otherwise, it was one of the crimes of the Romans at that time. And he didn't stop teaching because he held the Jewish people can't live without Torah, and therefore he was murdered in broad daylight in the horrendous way which we spoke about before. And they were all, him and the 10 martyrs, that we speak about on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, they were all murdered in a very public way, sanctifying God's name, and therefore they did a great Kiddush Hashem. Those 10 people, you can't go beyond the levels that they reached in sanctifying God's name. And it says about them, fine, it's a separate thing. Now here we go. In any case where it says, Yaharug, you should get killed, and don't transgress the sin. Just by the way, if somebody puts a gun to your head and says, I want you to eat this tray food right now, so you say, okay, I'll eat the tray food. Somebody puts a gun to you and says, I want you to desecrate the Shabbos, you desecrate the Shabbos. Somebody says, I don't want you to put on tefillin right now, or I'm going to kill you, don't put on the tefillin. Why? Because in those cases, Hashem says, I'd rather you live and not die, because if you're alive, you can perform more mitzvahs. These things are not the big 3 cardinal sins. But in everything, the other 3 cardinal sins, you got to give up your life. So now, anyone that it says, you should give up your life and not transgress the sin, and you don't allow yourself to get killed, you just desecrated God's name. The guy's holding the gun in the hand and says, I want you to kill this person over here, or I'm going to kill you. And you take the gun and you kill somebody else. That's a desecration of God's name. And if there were 10 Jews standing around watching you do it, you just desecrated God's name in a public fashion. And you lost out on the mitzvah of sanctifying God's name, and you transgressed the prohibition of you're not allowed to be mechal to desecrate God's name. Now, here comes the Rambam. The Afal Pikain, even though that you did the wrong thing, you were in a situation where really you were supposed to give up your life and not commit one of the 3 cardinal sins, but you succumbed to the gun that was pointed at your head. And you decided, you know what, I'm going to bow down to the idol because I don't want to lose my life. So you did the wrong thing. Afal Pikain, says the Rambam, since that you transgressed this prohibition while you were under duress, there can't be any greater duress than a sawed-off shotgun facing you in the eyes and telling you, I'm going to blow your brains out if you don't do this sin over here. So there's no greater duress than that. In Malkinaisai, ve'ein tzarich leima she'ein misanaisai. Not only do you not get lashes for committing the crime, certainly, says the Rambam, you're not going to get the death penalty. Bezdin, the court cannot kill you. Afilu harag ba'inus, even if you went and you killed somebody else, ba'inus, while you were under duress.
But aren't you always under duress?
Always under duress?
To do those three cardinal sins?
Yes.
So
Right. So listen. She'ein malkin memisin. We only, the bezdin, the court, can only give lashes and can only enact the death penalty. If you act willingly, and there were witnesses, and they warned you not to do it, and you transgressed it anyway, then you get the death penalty, then you get the malchus, then you get the lashes. But if you did it under duress, and it's not willingly, and there's no witnesses, and there's no warning that you're doing the wrong thing, you're totally under duress, says the Rambam, you cannot get punished. You did the wrong thing, and you desecrated God's name. We're not going to take that away from you. But that you should get punished afterwards, we can't punish you because that's not the way the punishment works. Punishment is only when you willingly do something you deserve to get punished. But if you're acting under duress, says the Rambam, you're not going to get punished. Shneimar, and he brings verses. Fine. Fine. So that's this main point the Rambam is making. He's saying a fascinating thing. Even though that the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects that you would be willing to give up your life instead of committing one of these three big sins, if you did commit the three big sins because you didn't want to give up your life because the gun is pointed at your head, if you did it even in public with 10 Jews around, that means you just desecrated God's name. Publicly, that's one of the worst things you could possibly do. Nevertheless, we can't punish you because you were under duress. So that means then, says the Rambam, we're only going to punish you if you did it willingly. What does willingly mean? That means that I was aware of what I'm doing and I was making a decision on my own to do the wrong thing, therefore I get punished. So I can only get punished when I use my free will. If I'm not using my free will because I'm under duress right now, I'm being forced to do this, so then it seems to me that I don't really have a choice. So that if I don't have a choice, you're not going to punish me. So then there are cases in my life where I'm not really going to have a choice if I'm being forced in a certain way. Yes?
before Rambam, were they punishing people for this?
What?
Before Rambam came down with this, were they punishing people for doing this?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, the Rambam is writing and he's saying that this is what the law is, and assuming that that was what was understood back then as well.
Before his time.
Right.
So if you're not going to be punished.
Because again, the Rambam is basing his commentary, he's basing his words on whatever it says in the Gemara.
But all right, then why list these three aggressions if you're not going to be punished for it?
No, but the point is that these three aggressions are that you are supposed to give up your life for it. And you have to know that. Now, if you don't, okay, that's what he's saying. If you don't give up your life because you're being forced with the gun at your head to do these things, so then you still get Achila Hashem, you desecrated God's name big time for doing such a thing, but we can't give you a punishment in this world of lashes or the death penalty.
In the world to come, you're punished.
In the world to come, even that's a question. You're under duress. So now you're going to get punished for the Chila Hashem that's involved, but are you going to get punished? Good question. Okay, let's see.
So willingly is if someone just came up to you and said, kill someone.
Willingly, if somebody comes and says, "Can you do me a favor? Can you take this guy out?" He's not threatening you.
Okay, but let's say he comes up and says, "Can you take him out?" I will. But if you didn't get a warning not to do it, you're home free.
So again, so you're right. There has to be a warning. There has to be a warning. There has to be witnesses. Right? Okay. Okay. So then you'll be at the hands of heaven. You'll receive your punishments.
But if you're told you're not going to get a punishment here, why would you be punished there?
No, that's again, if I'm doing it willingly, it's just that I don't have the advent of warning or witnesses, so that means in this world they cannot try me, but Hashem knows what my intentions were, and therefore I'm going to get punished in the world to come.
But going back to the three aggressions, wouldn't it have been better to word it, there are three things that if you don't do, you'll have this greater reward. In other words, if you don't bow down, you'll have this extra mitzvah or something, rather than stating, hey, you shouldn't do this, you'll be punished, but you won't be punished, and if you do it, you won't be punished. If you do it, you get a mitzvah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, in other words, they tell you three things not to do.
Right.
And then at the same time, they tell you if you do it, nothing will happen to you. But if you don't do it, you'll get an extra mitzvah, or a special mitzvah, or something. So shouldn't they just list that you'll just get the mitzvah by not doing it?
Well, the Rambam is coming to teach us this important concept that when a person is under duress to this extent, so the court of law down here in this world cannot punish a person. This is a major thing that he's saying.
Why distinguish it between eating treif or desecrating the Shabbos if you're not going to get punished for it? Let's say somebody puts a gun to your head and says eat some treif and you don't, and they shoot you. Do you get that extra mitzvah? Or now you broke the rules of the game.
Well, you're asking if somebody would come and say, eat the treif or I'm going to kill you?
Yeah, and then you don't want to eat the treif.
Right.
So you get punished because
you might in that case, depending on what the scenario is, you could get punished in the world to come because you gave up your life when you weren't supposed to. Now, that being said, if it's what's called a shas hashmad, which means that there are nations around us that are trying to destroy the Jewish people and wipe us out, and they then tell you, you're going to eat the treif, I'm going to kill you. In that case, in order to make a Kiddush Hashem, to show them that I'm not going to subjugate myself to your will, in that case, then it would be a mitzvah. For example, in the Holocaust, if you were there and you did not want to eat, you could eat the treif food. You certainly could, because it's a matter of life and death. But if the Nazi would come over to you and say, I noticed that you're not eating the treif like everybody else, you're going to eat the treif. And the guy says, no, I don't eat treif. And he says, I'm going to kill you or you eat the treif. So I'm not going to eat the treif. So then, certainly, if there's going to be other Jews that are around there, they're going to see what you're doing for the sake of the honor and dignity and sanctity of God and His Torah. So then you made a Kiddush Hashem, you sanctified God's name, you did not desecrate His name. And you're not going to get punished for that, you'll be rewarded for that. Now, the Rambam says further, he says like this, and this is going to be what he's going to get into over here. The Rambam says, though, that if, let's say that a person has a life-threatening illness, God forbid, and the only cure for that illness, which is known, is if he does one of these three cardinal sins. However it works, it's understood that if you have this particular illness and you bow down to idols, it's going to heal you. If you end up having relations with this woman that the Torah says you're not allowed to have relations with, you're going to get healed. So the Rambam says over there, if he chooses to save his life by committing one of those sins, then he's going to be punished. So the Rambam, I'll just read to you the words so you can hear what the contradiction is going to be over here. And he says the Rambam, Misha Chala, someone that got deathly, here we'll call deathly ill, V'nata Lamus, he's about to die, he's heading towards death. And the doctors say, and the doctors say, if you do one of these things in the Torah that says you're not allowed to do, you're going to get healed. Says the Rambam, once that your life is in danger, you could do whatever you need to do to save yourself. So if they say that the only medicine that's going to save your life right now is eating shark meat, pills that are encased in capsules of chazer, and that's the way that you're going to get. That's the way you're going to get better. So then take the capsules, take the medicine, because it's a danger to your life, and this is going to save your life. You're allowed to do such a thing, no problem. Except if they tell you the only way to save your life right now is the 3 cardinal sins, sakana, even when you're in a situation of danger, life and death, you're not allowed to heal yourself with those things. And if you end up transgressing and you bow down to an idol to make yourself better, and you get healed, the Bezdin, the court down here in this world, will punish him accordingly, whether it's going to be lashes or whether it's going to be the death penalty. So the question is pretty obvious, and that's what Rabbi Tatz is going to come to discuss. This is what we call a contradiction. On one hand, you're telling me that if the guy puts the gun to my head and he says, I want you to bow down to the idol, I'm going to kill you, I'm not allowed to bow down to the idol, I have to get killed. But if I'm too weak to handle the duress, the pressure that I'm under, and I end up bowing down to the idol and I don't get killed, so I just desecrated God's name, that I did, but I'm not going to get punished. Says the Rambam, because anything that's under duress, you cannot get punished for. You have to willingly do the act to be able to get punished. And I'm not willing to do the act, I'm under duress. I'm being forced into it. But then the Rambam says, now let's say you're dying from the disease that you have, God forbid. And the doctor comes and he says, listen, pal, you see that guy over there? This strange thing about this disease. If you'll kill that person, you will end up living. Says the Rambam, and so you're really in a situation of duress, aren't you? It's meaning it's my life or his life. So I think that's going to be the question: is this really duress or not? Meaning, the only way you're going to be healed is if you kill the person. So then, just don't get healed. If you kill that person, says the Rambam, you're going to pay for it in this world. The Bezdin will try you in a court of law, and they will either give you a death penalty, or they will give you malchus, they'll give you lashes, or whatever it is. So Rabbi Tatz is coming to say that this seems to be what we call a stira contradiction. On one hand, duress makes it that you're exempt. On the other hand, seemingly also duress. I'm a sick person who's going to die if I don't take the medication. That's pretty much under duress. But if I take advantage, or if I end up engaging in the forbidden activity of those 3 cardinal sins, and I do it to save my own life, and in this Rambam I'm healed, so then I'm going to get punished as a result. So how does this contradiction play itself out? Stay tuned for Wednesday when we will resolve the contradiction. Yes.
You don't have to.
You eat the chazer.
You eat the chazer. So where are you willingly doing that? How are you willingly going to be punished? Where are you?
When a person
A
willingly is somebody walks over and says, "Can you do me a favor? Can you take that guy out? I want you to kill him."
Yeah, but for one of the cardinal. Oh, I see. Just generally.
He said, "Kill that guy," and you said, "Okay, no problem. No one's forcing you. Doesn't have a gun to your head."
So many people today are. Somebody says the Jews for Jay. They say, "Give up the Torah." And you say, "Okay, you're willingly doing it.
Right.
You're taking out." That's
Well,
the same thing.
You have to know you have to know if that's idol worship or not.
Yeah, it's idol worship.
And also this idea of the Rambam, the person will have to know, how does duress in today's world play into things? Meaning, if I'm ignorant in the Torah, and I don't really know what Torah is all about, and I don't know what Amunah, believing in Hashem, is all about, and then a Hare Krishna comes to my door and knocks on the door, and the next thing you know, I'm heading off with a ponytail and a skirt, and I'm running off to the mountains of the Himalayas with Hare Krishnas. So did I just give up my Judaism? maybe there was no choice because I don't know enough of what it means to be a Jew to do such a thing. So maybe once that you have this concept of the Rambam, of you can never be punished for what's considered to be under duress, you have to have a very big definition, a broad definition of what duress means in today's time. Maybe we'll see.
Maybe I got it confused with, somebody tells me I will be cured by bowing down to this idol. Don't I have enough before I die the last few breaths, have the common sense to know all these goyim are dying too, and they're bowing down to this guy, this idol all the time. And nothing's, they're not being saved.
You have to be a smart.
They're not being saved.
Yeah, but they don't have, but, so what do you mean? But they don't have...
Why would I bow down to, if I see all these goyim bowing down and dying right and left?
Yeah, but again, if the gun's at your head...
I'm not saying with a gun, I'm saying, you said there's three
okay.
options
Yeah.
that you're not going to be saved if you commit. If there's no gun to your head and you bow down to the idol,
Correct.
thinking you're going to be saved. So why would I think that if I see all the goyim bowing down to these idols and they're dying right and left? They're not being cured.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not like they have magic potion
You're right, but let's just say the doctor tells you the only way you're going to be saved is if you bow down to this idol. That's the way that this treatment works. That's what you have to do. Again, assuming that he's telling you the truth.